Okay, welcome to Whisk-y Business. I'm Brandon Hudson. I'm a training program manager at the Office of Leader and Culture Development, and I am glad you are here. If you want to keep up in the chat, please do so. We'll also have a few polls that are anonymized because I don't want you to feel like you have to guard your answers. I hope you'll participate honestly. I encourage you. I love a live audience. If you're in a place you can turn your camera on and unmute, I want this to be a discussion to see if this is a tool that's helpful to you, to see if it's something you can use in your own culture. But thanks for being here, and we will keep this at 45 minutes or under. And so we'll just kind of get started. Except my screen is frozen. So hang on one second. So about 15, 20 years ago, my kids were very young, and they went to a Montessori school when they were little, so they learned a lot of things as children that I didn't know as a young adult, even about cooking and cleaning and all the things that I just didn't know how to do as well as they did at a young age. But one of the things that meant is that we had a lot of extra kitchen implements hanging around. And so one of the things that happened was we broke a whisk, and it got me to thinking about whisks. And this is not even the whisk that we broke, but oh, yeah, here it is underneath. This is a whisk. We use it all the time. It does what it does very, very well, and it doesn't do a lot else very well. You can't cut things with the whisk, but you can mix them better than you can mix them with anything else. And when you break a whisk, what happens is that the whisk we broke, it had a little collar right up here on the whisk. And it was the thing that held all these rods together. And so when we broke the whisk, all these little individual metal rods came out. And it got me to thinking about, what do we use whisks for? Where did whisks come from? And whisks has been around for a long time. They used to be made out of wood. And the reason people made whisks is we like, as humans, to blend things together that don't want to blend together, like oil and water, like eggs, period. Eggs are not, there's a yolk and there's a white. And it's kind of hard to get them emulsified. And we're going to talk about emulsification a lot, which is just a fun word. Lots of soft consonants in that. So emulsification is when things get so well blended that their separate parts are really indistinguishable. And so we're going to, I'm so sorry. I see that someone has signed on as Polly Jolly, and I really have to believe that's Shelby, and maybe it is and maybe it's not. But she gets misnamed in our office a lot. Thank you, Shelby, for sidetracking me on my first webinar for the Office of Leader and Culture Development. I really appreciate that. That's the opposite of the multiplication, not mixed at all, right there.
Not me.
Yes, well played, Shelby. Well played.
Not me. I promise.
So it got me to thinking about whisks and what do we do with them. And I was a pastor at the time, and I was working with a lot of different people. And I thought about what we really need is we have all these different people. And if you try to beat an egg with just one of these little metal strands straightened out, it does not go well. You can't mix an egg with just one thing. And it became this metaphor for how I've built teams around me for the next 15 years of what we need is a way to, without assimilation, you never lose that this is an individual rod. You don't lose the personality of people, but we hold them together under tension, which I want to talk about how tension can be a positive thing. We hold them together under tension to have it become something greater than the individual parts and to achieve something greater than the individual parts. I've looked through the registration. I've seen what a lot of y'all do. And I don't know if you got the email last night, but I would ask, I sent y'all an email that just asked the question, if you were going to describe your current culture as a cocktail or mixed drink, what would you describe it as now? So if you want to put that in the chat or unmute and answer, I would love to hear what kind of drink your current team is. Oh, tequila sunrise. It's a couple of ingredients to great effect. Excellent, excellent. The martini, that's pretty bougie, Shelby. Bloody Mary, we're all pretty different, blend well together. I love the Long Island iced tea because it's just, best I can tell, that was just somebody who was like, hey, we got a bunch of spare liquor hanging around. What if we just poured it all together and saw what happened? Anita, I feel like that's an aspirational drink. Margarita on the rocks with salt on the rim. You're just describing what you would like to have. Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that everybody works so well together. The pina colada, excellent. Yeah, you're feeling the summer vibes. Don't look at the cloud cover outside today if you're on the TTUS or TTU campus or HSC. Yeah, I think it's great. When culture works well together, it is like a good mixed drink or a well mixed anything. You can't taste the separate parts. I've got pretty good ADHD, and so I've learned as I've grown into understanding that like certain things really bother me, and so I think Dairy Queen makes the best soft serve in the business because everywhere else I can feel the sugar granules when I eat the soft serve, and that to me is not the mix that I like. I love seeing that all of these teams that you all represent are working well together. I hope today we can just kind of discover a framework that's worked for me in the past that will help when teams don't work well, and just maybe some maintenance things for the teams that you're on. I will say I don't know for sure what all of you do. I've looked through the list, but I think this works regardless of what your title is in any role. I think you can apply these principles to help create a culture that works beyond the individuals without losing the individuals and makes a difference in the world. So you've kind of defined you've done what kind of mixed drink you are. And I think I know what the answer to this poll is going to be based on how you feel yourself as alcoholic beverages. But the first thing I would ask you to do, and I want to say again, these are all anonymized. So if you want to give an answer that you might not want anybody else to see, it should be anonymous. But I want you to talk about the consistency of your culture. Does that show up for you, the poll? Yeah, I see the thumbs up. Thank you, Jessica. So you have choices here. Is your current culture smooth and emulsified? You can taste no difference between people. Clumpy. I love clumpy. Clumpy is like how I would describe high school culture. It's the total breakfast club thing, right? You've got the jocks and the nerds and the cheerleaders and all of those people who like there are certain points of connection, but there's no holistic connection. Oil and water separated. I am loving that so far. I see nobody who's just burnt. It's okay. We all get to that place occasionally. Can you all see, I'm going to be honest, my first one doing one of these with the Office of Leader and Cultural Development. Can you see the results coming in on that? No. Shelby says no. So I will tell you, I will end this poll. We'll see what happens. So far, we're at 50% in sync of the participants on here, smooth and emulsified. We're at 6% separated oil and water, and we're at about 44% clumpy, pockets of connection, but no consistency. And I'm going to end that poll, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So how many of you, and you can answer in the chat or verbally or thumbs up or whatever, how many of you love the concept of tension? How many of you like having tension in your life? No, absolutely not. No, thank you. No tension. All right, here's the hard thing. Tension can actually be really helpful, right? How many of you have a car or like drive something or ride in something. So at the front of that car is what is called a tensioner belt, or at least there used to be. We may have a newfangled car that doesn't have one. But a tensioner belt is what keeps the water pump running with your air conditioner condenser and compressor, with the fan that keeps the car cool. And so if there is no tension on that belt, some part of your car is going to break down and leave you stranded on the side of the highway. How many of you have ever shot someone with a rubber band? There are no lawsuits to be filed today, by the way. This is a litigious-free zone. Yeah, I hope that that's all the time, shooting people with rubber bands. That's what they're for, right? I don't know what else we use them for in the office besides to fire at one another. And if you didn't have tension on that rubber band, you would have no energy, right? Tension is a form of energy. Now, there's a reason that we don't want to be in tension. Tension that we hold inside ourselves is really unhealthy. It's bad for us. But I want us to work away from thinking that tension is always bad and understand that tension, kinetic energy, etc., does have some positive effects. It creates, in a whisk, the form that holds a team together or holds disparate parts together. And we're going to talk about the acronym W.H.I.S.K and what that means and how that is a system for creating, I think, a healthy kind of tension within a team culture that can really create excellent results. Anybody got any questions so far or comments? I welcome pushback, feedback, any of it. Joseph says, you can see the chat. It's funny, yesterday being Star Wars Day, we got on this whole kick in the office with some of the people on my floor. If I said by we, I mean, it was just me. I'm pretty nerdy, and we were talking about my 1977, 78, 79 Kenner Star Wars figures that are the worst action figures ever made because they have so little articulation. But it got me thinking about the G.I. Joes I had, which were held together. Their hips were basically a small rubber band that held the legs together over a little metal hook. And like a human body, should that be pulled too far, you can definitely break a G.I. Joe hip. Yeah, that's what made those figures work. And tension's what makes effective teams work, when we can work in a great way. All right, so let's get into what these look like. We want tension, but we want a very specific kind of tension. And the way we do that is that we have to go to, again, we have to understand tension is not the enemy, it's the bridge. And how do we achieve that tension is by the following acronym. It's the word WHISK. And this is what I think it stands for. The first thing is we have to approach each other with wonder, with curiosity over assumptions. There's a great scene in Ted Lasso, if you've ever seen it, where they're playing darts in a bar, in a pub in England. And this kind of the villain in the scene is thinking he's going to beat our hero, Ted Lasso. And then Ted Lasso and Walt Whitman shows up in that show a lot, but he just basically says, you never asked if I'd spent my childhood playing darts. You didn't get curious, you got judgmental. And I realized that wasn't about me, it's about the people who are judging. And so I want to put us another poll up here. And again, good that this one's anonymous, or it would be for me. And that is, hang on. Again, sorry, my bad. Wait 1 second. All right. This was a little bit of a short answer. I want you to think of one assumption you've made about a difficult colleague this week or last. And I want you to take about 30 seconds, just type the answer in. Don't hit submit until I tell you to go. And we will do that just so we can kind of get everybody's to pop up at the same time. Sometime I want you to think of a recent time that you've made an assumption about a difficult colleague. Either this week, it's pretty early in the week, so I don't know what kind of week you're having, or last. And then we'll all hit submit at the same time. Okay, if you've got your answer in there, or if you're still typing, you should go ahead and start hitting submit. Take about another 10 seconds for y'all to hit submit, and then I'll end the poll so we can see the results. Yeah, I was wrong that Polly Jolly is Shelby. That's my bad. If y'all have never met Shelby, she gets called a lot of different names. None of them bad, but just different names. All right, let's see here. It's probably Jason. That could be true. All right. Here are our results. They're incapable of understanding how our office works and the requirements to ask the same question, even though we've answered it previously. Take offering help as something bad, a lack of accountability. Assumed we understood each other, and I was sad to learn my metaphors were taken literally. I try not to make assumptions about anyone. I just assume they're having a bad day or something. That's fair. That's good. You're on the way to being curious instead of judgmental. Stubborn. Not comfortable at work. Assumption people know how to do something, found out they did not. Lost and disorganized. Others to do hard things for them instead of learning how to do it themselves. My coworker is just a grumpy old man and needs to retire. Otherwise, who will tell people to get off their lawn? Not capable of job duties. Calling in sick when not sick. Just don't get it. They don't do anything because they are never in their office. That's fantastic. Like that is that. Thank you for your honesty on that. Now, let me ask that question in a different way. How many of you love it when people make assumptions about you? Hate it, right? There is a biological reason that we make assumptions. Our brains are prediction machines, right? So we survived as a species because we took information and we made predictions. And those predictions keep us alive. But at the same time, we don't live in a world where saber-toothed tigers are trying to eat us anymore. And so that biological impulse to make judgments, prejudgments, is not as helpful as it used to be. The world is much more complex and less life or death all the time. And so what that often turns into is these assumptions we make about people. It's that same kind of impulse. The other is, if you've ever read the book Sapiens by Yuval Harari, kind of my very rudimentary understanding of that is that one of the things he says is basically Homo sapiens defeated Neanderthals and Homo erectus because we were the best species at gossip. We're really good at triangulation. We're really good at creating an us versus them dynamic, at tribalism. All of that feeds into assumptions. Instead, what we have to do is understand that assumptions are damaging. They're not based on facts. Sometimes it is just a grumpy old man. Sometimes it's someone who's mourning the loss of something. Sometimes it's people who are incredibly lonely. And when we make those assumptions, we act on those assumptions, we internalize those assumptions, we're just creating and reaffirming what could be very incorrect data. It's very exclusionary when people make assumptions about us. And all of us have felt it. And the result sometimes is we want to turn around and make assumptions about other people, but it's not a great way to build a team that's not clumpy or that's not separated or a culture that actually works. Instead, we have to shift to this space of wonder, curiosity. I think the first thing we do to do that is we have to own it. We have to name it within ourselves when we're being judgmental, when we are taking incomplete information and telling ourselves a story to justify the feelings we have about someone so that we can feel better about ourselves often. We have to own that, acknowledge it, name it, and then set it aside. Instead, we have to get curious. There are better ways to ask it, but the question why is a really powerful question. Somebody comes in, they're having a bad day. They're stressed out, they're snappy. Instead of assuming they're just a bad person or that's how they are, if we can begin to be the people in our teams who get curious, who say, I wonder what's happening in their life. I wonder what kind of evening they had last night. The secret to that is very difficult for me, but it is that we have to learn to separate behaviors from people. That's hard sometimes because sometimes people habitually do things and it makes it very easy to put their behaviors with them. But the more we can understand that a work product or a behavior from someone is not the totality of who a person is, then we can have that little narrow avenue where we can try to get to know people better. When we get to know people, our assumptions become more factual. We get to know what's actually happening, why they might feel a certain way, what might be going on. And what I would encourage us to do, the first step in the W.H.I.S.K framework is that we have to be curious. We have to wonder instead of judging. And it can totally change a culture, just asking questions instead of making statements. Like, I wonder what's happening with that person. Why are they ill-prepared? Sometimes people are ill-prepared for their job because they haven't been trained correctly and they're trying their best. Again, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that we should let people off the hook totally. We're going to come to that at the very end of this framework. But I am saying if we can start with wonder, it goes a long way. And I would ask you, what would happen in your culture if you could wave a magic wand and take all the assumptions away about you and about others and treat everyone with a curiosity? How would that change what your office, what your team looks like? Trust. Yeah, trust would exist. That would be a big step. And that's a perfect segue into the second piece of the W.H.I.S.K framework, which is honesty. Vulnerability is the currency of trust. How many of you love to be vulnerable? To show people your soft underbelly. Yeah, not particularly. I like that phrasing. And I really like the just note. So I think that's true. Being vulnerable is hard. And thumbs down. I love y'all's feedback. Here's the thing though. I used to love the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoons. And this is the one I'm thinking of, but it happens in a lot of cartoons and in live action movies occasionally, where you'll see a backdrop painted like a Hollywood set, and it looks like a tunnel, but it's really a brick wall. And it's painted to look like a tunnel, but people will run towards that tunnel. And in the cartoon or in the comedy, They run as hard as they can towards that tunnel to escape whatever it is, but it ends up being a brick wall, and they hit it and they fall down or break their face or whatever happens. And that's because there's a big difference in life between imagery and honesty. All of us are trained by the culture around us, by our work culture, by the way we grew up, by what we consume in media, to have an image we project. My wife is a therapist, and I would call it a Jungian mask, but every time I call something a Jungian mask, she's like, I want you to explain a lot more about Jung to me. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't want to talk anymore about Carl. So what I do know is that images are not helpful when we're trying to build a team, and that honesty has to start with leaders. Honesty has to start with, and by leader, I don't mean the title you have in your office. I mean by people who are brave enough to take the first step. Let's be clear, this is kind of dangerous, and it does require bravery, because if you are in a culture that does not value honesty, that does not have wonder, then to be the very first person to really be honest and vulnerable, it feels very scary. I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about like trauma dumping here. I don't mean you need to roll into work and talk about all the things that happened to you as a child. Those things matter. I don't think they don't matter. And I think we always bring a lot of our life into our work life. But at the same time, I do think being able to admit when we're wrong, when we mess up, shouldn't be a sign of weakness. It should be a sign of ownership. It should be a sign of power, actually. In systems theory, one of the things we learned is that often when you walk into a room, it doesn't matter who has the title, that the actual leader in any given room is the least anxious person in the room. And so when you walk in and you see someone who's got the grand poobah title, but they're fidgety and they're nervous, and you can just feel it coming off of them in waves. I don't care what their title is. They do not feel secure in their leadership. But if you see someone else who is relaxed and comfortable, let's make the assumption, back to that it's not that they don't care, it's just that they trust who they are. And so they're able to be vulnerable and honest and to own who they are. Honesty can be led from any position in an organization. It helps when it comes from the top down. It's not required. But what I would encourage us in this framework to do is, if we're wondering about people, the backside of being curious about others is being honest about ourselves. And I saw something really cool earlier this semester. I was on Angelo State campus, and the president of that university was talking to a group of students, and he gave them his personal cell phone number. And he said, hey, this is my cell phone number. If you see something on campus that is not right, call me or text me. And I was sitting at a table with his chief of staff, and she said, he does that to every parent at freshman orientation. He gives them his cell phone number. And so far, it has not been abused by anyone. But what I loved about that moment was, here's the president of I will get you a recording, Ivanka. I'll send it out to everyone later today or tomorrow. Thanks for being here. What we learned from President Hawkins at ASU was he understood that perfection is something to be sought after, not something we assume we've already achieved. And honesty plays a big role in that. If we want to grow as individuals and as a team, we have to be willing to create space to own our mistakes. Any questions about that before we roll on a little bit? Because I think based on some of your earlier answers, I'm very interested in this next poll. The third part of the W.H.I.S.K framework is intentionality. And by that, I mean purposeful investment in systems and in people. It is using the right people doing the right jobs to achieve maximum effectiveness. Back to the whisk metaphor, at some point, if you put too many more times in this whisk, it becomes less effective. It just becomes a big block of metal. If you have too few, it becomes less effective. Teams are best, cultures for work best when it's the right number of people doing the right jobs. There's some enemies to intentionality. My least favorite enemy, and the one that I see a lot, is this is the way we've always done it. When people are like, well, we can't try something new because this is the way we've always done it. Or cronyism, nepotism. These are enemies of intentionality. Somebody gets hired because they're somebody's great aunt's cousin's college roommate's son. Like, that person may not be equipped. I'm not saying they can't have the capacity, but they may not be equipped to do the job they've been hired to do. And that's very unintentional team building. Sometimes we're in a rush to get a product out, to get a result out. And so we don't think we can take the time to rethink the process by which we do things. And I would be curious, what are some other enemies that you see to really being intentional about who does what and how we do things? And while you're thinking about that, you can answer that in the chat. Let me launch this other poll just to see how you're spending your time. How much of your work time is spent on tasks or in conversations that make sense? And you can read out there, 90 to 100%, everything makes sense and contributes. 79%, I understand the purpose behind the majority of what I'm spending my time doing. 50 to 70%, most of what most makes sense. 30 to 50%, a lot of my time spent on things that don't make sense for me to be doing or don't make sense at all. And then 0 to 30%, I don't even understand what I'm doing. I'm really happy to see that nobody is questioning why they are here. That's good. That's really good. 35% of you, 39% of you, everything makes sense. 39% of you, most of it makes sense, or the majority makes sense. Mixed messages seem to be an enemy of intentionality. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm actually going to be leading a professional development next week or week after next about what do you do when you have two bosses, when you have two people that you really report to and they don't agree. Yeah. People being treated differently is a huge enemy of intentionality. I worked in HR for a year, and we had an employee who, when I went back through her file, had been written up repeatedly for some bullying, basically, emotionally mistreating her, people around her. And yet I could also look back and see that she got a raise every year about a month after she got written up. I was like, hey, this makes zero sense. What are we supposed to do with this? Yeah, we have a lot of things that can create mixed messages, can create enemies of really being intentional. Intentionality is something that's really hard to achieve. It's something that is difficult because we get busy. And intentionality takes taking a step back. Sometimes it's about rethinking who is on a team. Other times it's thinking about why do we do what we're doing. We live in a culture that sometimes didn't seem to get over middle school. We just have busy work that doesn't seem to contribute to the bottom line or to creating change around us. As leaders, we want to be the people who are unafraid to step back and say, why? This is not about why somebody might be in a bad mood. This is about why are we doing this the way we're doing it with the people that we're doing it with. And so the very first step is we have to be open to new ideas. And that can be scary. We don't want to let people go. We don't want to change personnel. Sometimes it doesn't require that. It requires training the people around us different. We're also creatures of habit. We're very comfortable with the way things are done, even when they frustrate us. Sometimes we really get addicted to our frustration. If we didn't have something to complain about, what would we do with our time? Intentionality takes all of that energy, that kinetic tension, and says, no, no, no. Let's think through this. Why do we do what we do the way we do with the people we do it with? And I think, again, these are building on each other. We have wonder, we have honesty, and now we can, if we're owning our mistakes and we're treating people with curiosity, now we can start to get intentional about the system. I would encourage you as you go through the rest of your week, pay attention to what you're working on. Are there things that don't make sense that maybe don't need to be done? Are there things that don't make sense for you to be doing that maybe someone else could do, even if it meant some training for that person? Intentionality leads really naturally into this next piece, which is safety, the freedom to fail. The deep reality is, in 2026, what got us here will not get us where we want to go. And yet we are creatures of habit. We are creatures who want to stay in this comfort zone. The comfort zone is also where we often get sick. It's where we get in trouble. It's where we get unhappy. How many of you feel like you have the space to fail in your team, or that teammates have the space to fail? Yeah, you don't like to fail, but you do feel safe too. Good. Joseph, I'm glad to hear that. You do have it. I really love hearing that. I think the only way to grow forward is to feel the safety to fail. Because failure is an indication that you're trying. Yeah, okay. That makes sense, Karina, that it goes with being treated differently. Maybe some people have the space to fail and others don't. And that is a cultural issue, because either everyone has the freedom to fail or no one should. And I would really lean to everyone has the freedom to fail. There is, and I'm going to get this wrong, there was an article in, I think it was Inc. the other day, about a Chinese electric car manufacturing company. And the guy who started this company, they had this horrible accident that one of their early cars got into a wreck and the battery exploded. And he took that as a personal affront. And so what he started to do was, when they're designing something and they experience a failure, he makes his engineers repeat the failure the exact same way 100 times in order to truly understand what the failure is. Because his contention is that you cannot fix that which you don't understand. Now, most of us don't have the freedom to fail 100 times or the time to repeatedly make something fail 100 times. But the principle of understanding failure as the means to growth works for everything. I like to play golf, and golf has a very complicated swing that's not really repeated in any other action we do. And if you do not take the time to understand why something is going wrong, you can't fix it. And you can never pressure yourself into getting it right the first time. Instead, in a healthy team, in a healthy culture, in a culture that's bound together and can make a difference, we have to come to the place where we can fail and debrief and then move forward. And I think that's key to an effective team. All right, the last piece of the whisk analogy is probably my favorite, and that is kindness. And what I want to really point out about kindness is that kindness is not niceness. It is realness over niceness. Niceness looks a lot of different ways. I moved to North Carolina, grew up in Lubbock, moved to North Carolina when I was 28. And I thought I was from the South until I moved to North Carolina. And despite having North in the name, I found a very genteel Southern culture that was full of niceness and not much kindness. In some of the circles I was running, not everybody, but it really led me to evaluate the statement, bless their heart. Because normally when someone said bless their heart, they were about to say something really offensive right after. But they somehow felt that if they said bless their heart, they were being nice, and they could then say whatever they thought. I think also that niceness is what happens when we're uncomfortable and we want to diffuse the situation so that we feel better and we don't have to deal with conflict. I want to define kindness in this way. Kindness is the skill we use when we're less concerned about our own discomfort and more concerned about helping other people grow. Kindness tells the truth without dismissing who someone is as a person. Kindness is a crucial part of the kind of positive tension that we have. How many of you, like, you can just give me a thumbs up, you have people in your life, it doesn't have to be at work, who treat you with kindness? They tell you when you mess up because they believe that you can grow to do something better. Good, good. At the same time, how many of you have used, oh, that's a fun little thumb that floated through the screen. How many of you have used niceness to avoid having a more difficult conversation? So my supervisor, Lane, we were on a trip and we were meeting with a couple of people at another university. And I got really excited about what we were talking about. And apparently I was, like blurting out over people, which when I am blurted out over, I really hate that. But I was just really excited. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to tell you, like, blah, blah, blah. And we get in the car afterwards and he goes, hey, it didn't seem like a big deal, but I just want you to be aware that you were talking over people. And I was particularly aware because both of the people we're meeting with were women. And I didn't want to be talking over women. I didn't want to be in any way doing that. And, was that the thing I wanted to hear? No, I like to hear that I get it right all the time. But if I'm being honest, I know that I don't. And what he said to me was so kind, because it wasn't that he didn't believe in my capacity to do better. It was that he did believe in my capacity to do better. And the kind conversation was about, hey, this happened. I don't think you know this happened. This is my perception of this. And I want you to know. Kindness believes that people can do differently. And it starts with us. We have to be the people who can go and have kind conversations. All right. Well, that's the WH-I-S-K framework. And what happens is that those things build on each other. We start with wonder, we have honesty, we have intentionality, safety, and kindness. And when our cultures reflect those principles, then we are a team that is bound together to really emulsify the world around us, to blend things and create things that don't seem like they go together, to make a difference in the world. I am so glad that you've been here for this. And I would love to get your feedback. You can scan that if you're on a device. I will send the link out and a recording of this afternoon or tomorrow. You'll be able to find it on the Office of Leader and Culture Development website. Eventually, it'll be on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions about anything, this has been pretty fast. You have any questions about anything, please email me, call me, text me. I would love to talk more about this. This is a thing that has worked for me, and I hope it's something that you find helpful. But thanks for being here, and I'm glad to get to know some of you. Look for more webinars coming up from our office. We'll have some 1 or 2 a week. Find something that resonates with you and join in. I'm glad you were here. Thank you.